We talked a lot about problems before lunch. This is going to be a really exciting panel because there's a lot of people who are very into solutions, high-tech solutions to this. Lots of good, exciting words like distributed ledger technology and machine learning. That's what we're going to get straight into. So everybody, please, big round of applause as I introduce our guests for this panel, starting with Yaunese Aazibou of BICS, Adrian Harris of Xintec, Pravesh Arora of Telesign, and Igor Skutsenya of LANCK Telecom. Gentlemen, please come up and join me up on stage. Are you doing the thing where you're lining up?
Right.
Yes. As you've guessed, Pravesh here is a substitute, but he's better than the original. We're glad to have you here. Now, guys, I'm just going to briefly give the audience a bit of a feel for your deep, deep expertise, so then we can go straight into the material. So to my immediate left here, Pravesh, Sales Director in the EMEA region for Telesign, previously at Vodafone Idea, previously at Reliance Group, previously at Nokia.
Yeah.
You know this industry inside out. And I know Adrian's raising his eyebrows there because he thought he was going to be the biggest expert on this panel with his experience dating back to 1985, Adrian, when you joined AT&T Bell Labs, and you've been at the cut and thrust of fraud and intelligence, director of new products with neural technologies, director of fraud solutions for Cerberus Solutions, and now fraud and risk consultant for Xintec. So another guy who really knows this industry through and through. Yaunese Aazibou, Chief Technology Officer for BICS. Well, that's a pretty good job title. That's an indication that you know something about what you're doing. And also, no one can say you don't know about the telecoms industry. You started your career with this Belgian company when it was, well, back when it was Belgacom. You were working for Belgacom in 1994. So the lad's done good for himself in terms of his career. And last but by no means least, Igor Skutsenya of LANCK Telecom, Senior Business Development Manager, concentrates on their anti-fraud solutions, is their RCS team leader, and he hosts their T-O'Clock webcast as well. So I was joking with Igor. He's very used to being in front of a big audience. So he's going to be good value for money today. And starting with you, Igor, your business now, you have a lot of visibility of traffic going all around the world because you're a wholesale carrier. So you know about the traffic you're carrying, you know about the networks that you're dealing with, covering both voice and messaging. But no business sees everything. That's the big problem, okay? How can technology help with identifying fraudulent activity so that progress can be made in fighting crime, even if we're not always seeking to gather more and more data to fight that crime? What can we do with technology with the data that we already have?
Sure. So us as LANCK Telecom, we utilize AI to essentially save a lot of resources, a lot of time, and basically utilize the data that we have to achieve the maximum results. Obviously, we don't see all the traffic in the world. However, the fraud scenarios and fraud cases and the tendencies that we see in one part of the world, we immediately recognize them using our AI, our machine learning, and then we understand how it works. We break it down into parameters so that AI understands what to look for in the future in other regions, et cetera, and then we protect the partners and all around the world from the danger that we saw in just one or two parts of the world. And also that means that with our expertise, we gather a lot of common knowledge with basic parameters like A numbers, B numbers, ACD, ASR, and all those other parameters that are basically usually present in the fraud schemes. And we're able to, using AI, to spot fraud attacks on a very, very early stage, which means that not only we're decreasing the damages done, we also we discourage fraudsters from proceeding. Because at first they will kind of test the route to see if the defenses are up or not. And when they see that the system reacted, the system spot them very, very early, they don't have to kind of proceed with the main volume. They understand that they will gain nothing from it, and they will move elsewhere.
Speed. That's a really important key factor that sometimes we don't elaborate enough on the need for speed, because in a way it can be tempting to take a long time because, look, it's a big problem, now I need to address it. Whereas actually if you react very quickly, you don't have that big dollar value for the crime you're dealing with, so you have to make the argument in a slightly different way in terms of what you've saved for the company. Just give me a feel, though, in terms of the change of speed from how it's been in the past to how it is now.
Anybody who dealt with the manual fraud control would tell you that you have to understand all the details, consult with a partner, perhaps have an internal meeting, check the parameters, check the mathematics, and it even starts with CDR upload. It takes time to upload the CDRs, make them analyzed, et cetera, et cetera. If you're using AI on SIP signaling traffic, then it's all done in real time. And since AI is very, very quick, it just needs several milliseconds to make the decision. Very, very accurate, very, very educated, the one that would benefit the most. We make sure, well, with fraud scenarios, especially in voice, the longer it goes, the more damage is sustained. And if we give them just several milliseconds, there's virtually no damage that they could do.
I'm going to continue that theme. I'm going to pick on you now, Adrian. Mm-hmm. Continuing this theme of speed, reacting promptly, but also the damage that maybe can be done if you react in the wrong way to intelligence, you form the wrong analysis. You've been looking at how to automate the analysis and explanation of patterns of data indicative of fraud so that telcos with smaller anti-fraud teams can respond in the right way. Is there a risk that intelligent analysis of data sometimes leads to counterproductive decisions that don't augment the intelligence that we have with automation sometimes isn't leading human beings down the right path? Can we automate the process of helping human beings to make the right decisions about fraud?
Yeah, so we play in a different world. So we're a vendor to small to medium operators, and they do have low budgets. They have small teams. And so in one sense, they're the ideal target, actually, for all these new technologies, for automation, for AI, machine learning. But at the same time, they also have that lack of people in order to monitor what's going on when these decisions are made by these new technologies. And so that sometimes creates a greater risk than the potential loss that you get from doing things in simpler ways. And if we've got time for a quick anecdote, it reminds me of something that happened to me a few years ago. We were putting in a solution for the detection of good old SymBox fraud, and we were CDR analysis, and we wanted to have a machine learning technique. So we said, okay, well, this is good because this operator also has a test call generation method, which is known to be of a high quality. And so we could use what they detect to learn the behaviors so that we can then detect on a broader scale. And it all worked fine, and it was in test. But there was a glitch with the test calling where it actually created a series of false positives. And essentially, our solution learned normal behavior as SymBox. And if it were live, that would have had a catastrophic effect. So you've got to you've got to make sure you use these things carefully. Now, of course, there are ways around that, but that also does take capacity and human resources to make sure that you monitor all of those things. So I'd say we're a great proponent of artificial intelligence and machine learning, but we actually spend a lot more time using it to do things like code faster or to improve the quality of the data that we're collecting in our system. So different ways. And then if you bring me back next year when it's taken a whole new step forward, maybe I'll be saying that we'll be using it, it'll be more prevalent in our customer base.
Is that something that you would widely recommend to customers then, that work be done just on improving the quality of data prior to beginning the process of analyzing it for identifying fraud patterns?
Well, say my passion is just to make make my life easier. That's really it. And I always say that I'll spend months and months and months to save myself 5 minutes, right? So it's all about that. But yeah, any way that you can use new technology to improve your life. And improving the detection is one thing, but improving the data so it actually gets used for more things is also equally as valid.
Give me an example. Give me an example of where improving data leads to better fraud detection.
So we have one particularly good customer who we take in data from all different sources, and we've been monitoring that data to continually improve. And when I say continually improve, that means we need to push back to the customer to improve the data quality that's coming. As a consequence of that, they're now using our system for all sorts of things that we never imagined that they would use it for. When we actually don't get any money for it because they use it, they're doing all this work themselves. But it's this whole idea that by improving the quality of data, they're no longer using some of the systems they used to use in order to make decisions such as business performance decisions, which is not really our domain.
Thank you for those insights. Now, Yaunese, I'm conscious that you're at the other end of the scale here in terms of we were hearing this morning about the scale of BICS and in terms of your global reach and the amount of traffic that you deal with and the amount of traffic you block already. From your perspective, the motivation to work with other carriers, how great is that? How much does that augment and help your business? How much does that then further lead to improvements over the conclusions that you could reach even from the data you already have? In other words, kind of encapsulate for me and the audience the significance of even for a big carrier working with others in order to pull data, pull intelligence together.
It's a good question, Eric. So I think we're all in agreement when I say that fraud is a rather complex issue, which is characterized by, I would say, many different channels which are being exploited by fraudsters. And at the same time, we also observe that these fraudsters, they are constantly evolving their, I would say, their tactics and strategies as to remain undetected as long as possible. So how do you deal with that? How do you solve that problem? So I believe that one of the appropriate responses that we should do is to have a fraud intelligence which is derived from a combination of different data sources, because this provides you actually the best possible comprehensive view of the fraud landscape, and it will allow you to identify abusive traffic patterns which otherwise would remain unseen if you would focus solely on a single data stream. But of course, the crux here, it's about sharing of information, and that's where I believe today in our industry we still have a bit of work to be done, because sharing information will require a number of items to address, to see how we can accelerate that. And a few things that we could do, for instance, is one, we should forge strong partnerships between all the stakeholders within the value chain. And I'm not only referring to MNOs, carriers, and aggregators, but we should also include regulators, industry organizations, law enforcement agencies, and ultimately even our customers that should partake in that collaboration. I think it's also key that we as companies that we invest in technology and tooling which enable data integration and solve interoperability issues to transfer that data across different platforms as to facilitate this, I would say, information and fraud insights sharing. I think, Igor, you mentioned AI and ML. I think it's very much key that we focus on that as well. I think the amount of data that is circulating in this industry is so huge, and if you want to bring that all together, you cannot go beyond these technologies because speed is of essence, because you need to have these data elements in real time. And ultimately, I'd also believe that we should think about one or multiple centralized platforms where fraud can be derived from these various data sources and in turn can be shared back in a secure and confidential manner to the different stakeholders.
Do you ever get frustrated in terms of knowing that data exists but not having the ability to get that data. And let me kind of like just elaborate a few examples in my mind so you can tell me if I'm right or wrong in terms of how I'm thinking about things. I'm very conscious that, say, in the USA, you have these very popular, not just in the USA, actually India and many countries, but these apps that are very popular. And of course, this is a different way of gathering intelligence on spam, on scam calls and messages. There's obviously national schemes now whereby people can very quickly press a button and notify that some suspicious message has been received. Do you ever get frustrated that things like that are not being made available to you perhaps as much as they might?
Well, frustrated is maybe a big word, but indeed, I do believe that as an industry, we should all try to go to a situation where we can bring these elements together without any monetary gains or commercial gains by the different actors involved in having that data, because in the end, we are all impacted by fraud. Today, there is obviously a lot of monetization which is ongoing to get and to obtain this type of information. But that's probably an area where I would say this is where there's room for improvement. But definitely, in my view, the more data we have, the better we will be able to identify fraud.
Right, we'll come back to that topic. Of course, I'd love to have any input from the audience on these things, so don't be shy. If I don't see you, just keep waving your hand until someone gets a microphone to you. I'm conscious as well, Pravesh, we've not heard from you yet. So your business, it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it, when you fight fraud? You do some great work, you deserve a pat on the back, and then a few years later, people are giving you hell about what you've done because it's part of the problem now, in a way. The great success that Telesign had in terms of pioneering the use of SMS to convey one-time passcodes, hooray, yes, a good step in the right direction. But you know where I'm going with this. You know what I'm going to say, well, now these SIM swappers, not just even a cottage industry, an industry at scale now. Oh, we were hearing like an open sourced industry now, where people are networking online through platforms like Discord and Telegram, selling each other data to facilitate SIM swapping. So what was very good ends up becoming part of a bigger problem that now needs solving. Yep. How can newer technologies keep pace with this innovation by the criminals who take your strengths and use them against them? What can be done to extract behavioral insights from the data collected by communications providers so that we're not just securing our networks, because those SIM swappers, they're not doing it because they want to send an SMS, they're doing it because they get into something else, protect not just our industries, but the industries that are dependent upon telcos.
Yep. I wish I had a great answer to that. So a bit for the audience about Telesign, we are a Proximus Group company. And you're right, our business started at the back of authentication business, so we were pioneers in one-time passwords. And we've essentially grown with our customers as they've been able to achieve sustainable business growth. Now, we probably use their operating systems in our daily lives, or we probably use their platforms to, hitch a ride, book a cab, or book a stay, or maybe order an on-demand service. Now, while we've been providing authentication solutions to our customers, most of them started coming back to us. And they said, authentication is good, but the bad actors out there are getting smarter, sophisticated, and they said, is much more that we can do. And they were seeing frauds like promo abuse, right? Starting from onboarding journeys to promo abuse, fake account creations. We know 1 in 4 accounts created are fake accounts. And then, as we talk to their payments team, financial team, so, they're struggling with chargeback frauds or financial frauds. On the Telesign side, we said, okay, we see billions of phone numbers going through our platform. Why not put together a team of data scientists and build our own machine learning algorithm, which can then provide more better insights behind these phone numbers based on all the velocity parameters that are going on through our platform. And that's where we really came up with this phone number-based risk reputation score. And of course, now we've added elements like IP and email address on top of phone numbers. And while the base model works across multiple industries and verticals and use cases, what we really do is we work very closely with our customers and we collaborate with them And we say, we really always look at training these machine learning algorithms by using the label data that our customers can share. So feeding into that label data, coming in with the base model that you have, can really fine-tune and customize those models per the use cases that they're trying to solve. And the eventual goal is that we be able to reduce these false positives, for those particular use cases. And what we've seen is not only that, when we started partnering with mobile network operators, we were really put an additional layer of protection by bringing in these real-time phone insights behind a phone number, right? Which can, right from the beginning, can establish trust by validating identity, but also look at some of the things you talked about, like SIM swap. Has there been a potential account takeover? Is there a high-value transaction which has been, on the back of a phone number update that's happened? So looking at those signals and technologies which are available from mobile network operators and adding this layer of intelligence, I think is bringing us closer to the problem statement. But we're there? I don't think so. We need more and more data sources, more and more partnerships coming together to be able to actually be one step ahead, if possible, with these fraudsters.
Okay, let's start tackling then. Thank you, that's a wonderful answer. But let's start tackling the subject that's inevitable in this panel, which is more and more data. Hang on, what about my privacy? That's the pushback that you get from people who take a certain legal perspective. That's perhaps some people's perception in the public. Yeah. Are we at the boundaries of what can be done? Where would a business like Telesign like to see things evolve in order that you get the data that you need, but being conscious of those privacy concerns?
Absolutely. And I think this is, I think pretty much all of us must be doing this on a daily basis and educating our customers, ecosystem. I think it's not about any commercial gains or, I think it's the benefit, right? When typically, if you look at a fraud syndicate group, they would procure these bunch of SIM cards. And what they would do is they want to maximize the impact of this cards, these SIM cards before deactivating them. So they would try to actually spam different platforms. It could be a ride-hailing app. It could be a hospitality app. Any of those. So what we are seeing is it's the industry who benefits. If we know that there is something suspicious going on with one of the global platforms, we know that this is potentially a behavior that may replicate on the another platform or the other global app that's out there because they want to maximize their return for those SIM cards before they actually being discovered. So we are trying to educate these customers. It's not like, everybody benefits from this exchange of information in a more compliant, privacy compliant manner. And it only improves and train the machine learning models further. So I think it's very important to bring all these together. And I can give you one example. I mean, recently we were talking to one of the customers, and they said, we've seen a pattern where we're seeing there are these reviews that are being left on our websites, and these are all fake reviews. And then there was a pattern that the same reviews were left on one of the platforms, but also on the other platforms. So what we're really saying is that these are, again, the same patterns that we are seeing, and one industry can actually benefit from the other if there's exchange of information. Yeah.
That's a really keen insight. I'm going to throw this out to the rest of the panel too, because I want to hear all your opinions in terms of how close we are to the limits of what can be done in terms of the exchange of data given the legislative legal environments we find ourselves in, and whether there is any kind of sense that there would be a need for some changes at that level, the legal level, to facilitate what can be done, or is there still more that can be done with technology without needing to have to change the law? Igor.
I would say that it's both. I mean, we're nowhere near the limit of the technology. AI has a lot more to provide. Excuse me. There's a lot more value. There's a lot more knowledge that could be done with all data sets, all data that we get and we introduce to our AI gets our system to be better, and it gets better as for identification, detection. We also use AI in our actual blocking practices as well. I mean, there's that one thing and one use of AI that is rarely talked about. It's not just about detection. You can use AI to introduce complex blockages, unblockage sequences. There are some complex kind of sequences that you could introduce. You're not just blocking A or B numbers and be done with it. As far as personal data, I think that's basically for the industry and regulators, obviously, to decide, because we hear about some tech projects that would involve listening to all the calls and all the conversation that people have over the phone, applying AI and determining, hey, this is essentially our AI deducted from the speech, that this is AI, so we reject the call. Well, in order to have that introduced and in order to use it, you must listen to all the calls by all the people, and this is major breach of privacy. And we hear that those decisions at least are being discussed on a major level. So this is kind of the scary part. We need to understand the limits of our technology. And for us, for example, this is our business model. We'd better work with the data that we have and perfect the technology that we have, but this is just our thing. Obviously, we're not at the scale of business for BICS, for example, and perhaps we don't face the same issues that they do. So,
yeah, just like to stress on one of the points that Igor meant. You say you get a lot of data. You say, are we going to push the limits of privacy? But as you said, you can also say, I've got this data and I'm doing those things. What are all those other things that we can do with the data that we have? And that's where there's a great deal of opportunity for different tasks, because in the fraud domain, we do tend to think of how do we detect things differently, but there's so much more to the whole process that we can do. But I just quickly stand on my soapbox here, as you guys are so lucky you get any data. One thing that happens in our world is you say, we could really help you much more if we could get this data source from there. And they say, oof, we outsource our IT department. I'm not sure how we'll manage to do that. And so that's the reality of what we have to face. It takes us ages and ages just to get some of the simplest data sources.
That's a frustration too.
Yeah.
Did you want to jump in, Yaunese?
Well, I'm in agreement with Igor. I think we are definitely not at the limit of what is possible. I think these limits today are imposed by regulators, by European national authorities, and I think it's up to them to see how we can push the boundaries even more, while remaining in compliance with, of course, the local regulations in the geographies we operate. But I think there is definitely more that can be done compared to today's situation. But obviously finding that balance between safeguarding the privacy of the individual while at the same time, or versus using that individual's data even without his consent in the fight against fraud, I think that's very much key, and that's a very tricky exercise to do.
Yeah, I mean, especially with your background, it's one thing to see things at the international wholesale carrier level, but of course you have also seen things down to the level of serving the individual phone user in Belgium. And Igor touched upon the use of AI for voice, but of course AI for messaging and the analysis of messaging. This is perhaps even much more a kind of more immediate thing that we're looking at, and Belgium, of course, changed its rules not that long ago in order to facilitate the scanning of messages.
Yes, but what I find a bit of a pity, it's Belgium. And I think we need to we need to break it open, and we need to really see this as a worldwide problem, because in the end, fraudsters, they do not stop at any border. It's not a Belgian problem, it's not a French problem, it's not a US problem, it's a worldwide problem, and we should go hand in hand to fight that. Because so there is a lot at stake.
So you would be relaxed if that kind of approach we're seeing in Belgium is now found in more countries, not just in Europe, but worldwide?
It could be a way to go, but maybe not the only way. I think there are very good initiatives in many different areas. So again, it would be good if there would be an expert team globally being brought together, not bound to any company, not bound to any specific national organization, that really goes to the heart of this very difficult to eradicate problem, I would say.
You say it with a smile because you know how hard it is. You know? This is the difficulty, isn't it? We could always wish that there was an international party that would act wisely to bring everybody together, but we have many different people with different needs and priorities, and so how to bring them together. So again, dwelling on that topic in terms of technology enables the exchange of information. In fact, we were commenting before we came on about the situation in India and the use of the distributed ledger technology, which have been mentioned this morning. And yeah, there's some signs that it's positives, but also we heard some warnings about some negatives with its use. That technology, though, as we commented, only within one country, it leads itself to the potential for an exchange of information across borders. Does the panel believe that a technology like that could be the stepping stone, if implemented in one country, to other countries then exchanging information across border? Or do we need regulators to take the lead in stipulating what gets exchanged, and then we'll sort out the technology for which it will happen? Who wants to go with that one? Igor?
Perhaps it would be a lot easier decision for the top management of any commercial entity if there is government regulations. I mean, we see that happening across the ocean, and this solution is actually on the road. There are numerous companies that are using it because you have to comply with government regulations. However, whenever there is a purely commercial decision to be made, well, there's a lot of barriers, a lot of leverages to consider, a lot of takes. I mean, when you don't have to comply with government or any international regulation, it's a more difficult decision, because then you compete for the budget, you compete with other projects, et cetera. But of course, that would be very, very nice if some data, maybe some basic data, but could be exchanged, for example, directly with enterprise and the network. If the enterprise will make sure with the network that this is the amount of data that I send, and that's basically it, then the operator, when they will receive a call or a message from some kind of source, but the brand owner will not confirm it, countering fraud will get a lot easier, of course. But it's not I mean, it sounds simple implementing that thing, but it's obviously not a simple task. I wish there would have been exchange of some data to make sure that happens. At least we could learn from that. We could use it to some extent, and perhaps it would be a lot easier thing to implement for smaller operators, for some enterprises that don't have the expertise of telecom market, something just to have it to cover the need and perhaps take care of the things that they are not experts on.
Great insights. Yaunese, I want to pick up again here on this theme of, because you're active in so many jurisdictions, because you're at risk if jurisdictions have contradictory, inconsistent requirements being placed upon you and multiplying your costs. Do I end up needing to look at you and say, it's up to you. You're going to have to solve this problem for the industry, because it's in your own interests to take a lead with setting a common expectation across multiple jurisdictions?
We are happy to contribute. But it's today we are indeed confronted with having to comply with many different technological implementations that we need to do for country X, Y, and Z, and they're never standardized, never aligned. So this brings a burden onto our organization and probably many more. So yes, happy to contribute, but I'm not immediately going to be there in the driving seat. So, so if there are candidates in the audience, please step forward, and happy to join and to give ideas. But just to come back on your point, Eric, of technology in terms of, do you have a kind of a holy grail in the technology that you say, if you roll it out in all countries and all fraud is going to be eradicated? Well, that I do not believe. I think there is not going to be one technology that is going to become the pinnacle in terms of fraud fighting. I think we need to be very conscious that whatever technology that is out there, and there will be new technologies coming in the future as well. I think these technologies, they are also available to the fraudsters, and they will use it to their advantage. So So in my view, we all should have a constant mindset of saying, okay, we're always behind in the fight against fraud. Whatever the technology is that we deploy, we should always assume that fraudsters have already found ways to circumvent our controls, our detection mechanisms, our way of blocking fraud, and that we're already trailing them. I think that if you don't do that, and if you really believe that technology will be your holy grail, and if you say, okay, I am covered, then I think you're in for a surprise.
I'm going to bring in Adrian here because I think you're a cynic like me, Adrian. So I'm going to give you a leading question here in terms of, do you agree with me? And you're entitled to disagree if you don't agree. Do you agree with me that there's a danger that we start hyping up wonder technologies in the industry, and then this translates to a good news message for the consumer, and will make them more complacent when actually we should have been continuing to keep them on guard because these wonder technologies may not always deliver to the extent to which the member of the public is hearing that they're going to deliver?
Yeah, so firstly, I'm a non-practicing cynic. And, but yeah, I think I can't disagree with that, and I think there is plenty of proof about those things in all industries, you know, flying aeroplanes even, right? People rely on the technology and then suddenly it goes wrong and they can't remember how to fly it properly. However, I still think overall there's a benefit. Whereas it's very easy to point to these examples where technology failed and there was no longer the skills to pick it up and do something with it. And if you only go on those, you're never going to make any progress because the whole idea is, you know, does a driverless car make it safer for everyone? And the answer is probably yes. Yeah. Does it make it safer for the individual? Maybe, maybe not, right? So,
not as cynical as I thought.
I'm positively cynical.
Yeah. I was going to build up Pravesh to be like the big optimist here, because I was going to turn this around and say, but you weren't as cynical as I expected. And turn this around and say, but hang on, aren't you the guy who's going to solve the problem for us? Because if we can get to the source, we identify who you're dealing with remotely over a network. If we solve that problem, isn't that the core of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really simpler things when we talk to our customers. It's just simple things that, and the end users, I mean, we can feel that. I mean, today you're on an e-commerce website. I mean, you're ordering some stuff. You need an assurance, which is an immediate email coming back saying that, okay, we've received your order, we can see it, it's there, your banking confirms you, yeah, we have recorded this transaction, it has gone to this merchant. I think there's just simpler things that we need to do which makes user more confident and trusted within these online platforms. So that's where everybody is talking about. But there are only these simpler things of when to communicate with the user, how to build that trust. I think that's super important, and these are very simple things that we can do. And we still see a lot of businesses not doing those things, right? There could be a journey. I mean, there are these local wallet companies in different markets, and they're providing their identity. There are merchants which they want to use their own technologies with that, and then they see there's some downsides, there's some trade-offs between security and friction. There are other businesses who want to show, oh, we don't need. I mean, I talk to betting companies, gambling companies. They will always be like, we're spending millions of bucks to get these customers to play one roulette on our website. And you're saying you bring in one-time passwords and create friction? No, that's not happening. And then you have to work with them to understand, okay, your KPI is growth. You want to get users to use your platform, come onto your website. Okay, let's move the one-time password to later on in the journey. When the user becomes a transacting journey or about to load some money, then you do your one-time password. So I think it's a fine balance, and it's where you work with your customers to understand what are their pain points, how to bring in those KPIs. They're happy, but you're also able to balance friction versus security. So yeah, but these are all little things that you need to educate and learn from your customers.
But the good news is more can be done.
Yeah. Of course.
I'm conscious of time. I would love to just keep on chatting to these guys, but maybe a few of you have questions in the audience too. Any hands up? Well, you're daft, because I'm going to keep on asking you questions if they don't. I've got another minute and a half of you. I look like the best brains in. Have I got a minute and a half? I got 1 minute. Okay. So for the entire panel, really quick, in terms of what would be the one piece of advice you give to any regulators in the room right now to solve all our problems and make your lives easier? One sentence, please, starting with you, Pravesh.
I think standardization, trust, yeah.
Only do things that you've seen to work.
Collaboration in between geographies.
Igor?
Address the challenges of messaging industry, flash calls and OTTs.
Fantastic answers with no time to prepare. Give them a great round of applause, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.